And what does the deficit spending, I know this is our second year in a row we have over $1 trillion in deficit spending, how does that impact the economy from your perspective?
We have an overall debt in this country of between 13 and 14 trillion dollars, and it's rising rapidly. The annual deficit last year was $1.42 trillion, and the annual deficit this year will probably be in the same neighborhood. The fiscal year in Washington runs from October 1st through September 30th, so we don't have the final figures yet, but it will be in the neighborhood of $1.5 trillion. This has a terrible effect on the American economy long term in that we have to pay back these deficits with interest. And who are those who are purchasing our debt? The Chinese, Saudi Arabia, other countries, and eventually he who pays the piper calls the tune. And my concern is that ultimately it will be the Chinese who will be calling the tune because they're purchasing our debt. Interest rates will undoubtedly rise over time in order to attract those who can purchase our debt, and that's why I think we have to get our fiscal house in order. Mayor, I'm not under the belief that we can balance our federal budget this year or even next year or perhaps the year after that, but we need a glide path back to fiscal responsibility. I was critical of the deficits in the years from 2000 until 2008 when there was a Republican president, President Bush, and Republican control of Congress for the first 6 of those 8 years. The highest Bush deficits were roughly $600 billion, and they were darn high. This year's deficit is $1.4 trillion, as was true of last year. President Obama ran for office in the belief that we needed fiscal responsibility. I hope beginning in January, when I think there will be more bipartisan cooperation in Congress, that we can try to get back to fiscal responsibility.
Well, Congressman, I know you're very consistent. I should have said this earlier when I introduced you. I think you served around 17 years in the Assembly, the State Assembly and State Senate, and part of that time you chaired the Budget Committee in the assemblies, and I knew you were against deficits at that time.
Well, thank you for raising that. I was opposed to the deficit expenditures that occurred, particularly borrowing without voter approval. This has occurred under a series of governors, Republican as well as Democratic governors. I think there's enough blame to go around. Let me say that it took me 10 years in the state legislature to get on the ballot my constitutional amendment, the Lance Amendment, that prohibits further state borrowing without voter approval. When I finally got it on the ballot, it passed in every municipality in this state, passed overwhelmingly. And I have come to the belief, Mayor, that we need to do something similar in Washington. And I actually favor a constitutional amendment at the federal level, maybe not identical with what we have on the books now in New Jersey in our state constitution, but perhaps requiring that deficits annually in Washington be no higher than a certain percentage of gross domestic product. Since World War II, the end of World War II in 1945, until the present time, the annual federal deficits have been no higher than 20% of gross domestic product. In these last 2 years, that has risen to 25 or 26%. It's rising dramatically, and we've got to rein that in.
Absolutely. Interesting. Congressman, so the unemployment rate still hovering around 10%. New Jersey, we're really having a difficult time. Of course, our Governor Christie is trying to tackle spending. But what is innately wrong with governments? Because if you look throughout states around the country, municipalities, federal governments, other foreign governments, you can see what happened with Greece recently. They just seem to spend well beyond their means.
I think that during the good times in the first part of the decade that has now ended, governmental entities in state capitals across America, and certainly true of the federal government, had expenditures based upon the good times. Nobody has repealed the business cycle in this country, and I would be wary of anybody in public life, the municipal level, the county level, the state level, the federal level, who says he or she can repeal the business cycle. It's ridiculous. And we should have some sort of reserve so that when there is a recession, that there's something to fall back on. Clearly was not the case in state capitals across America, not the case in Trenton. And I give Governor Christie and his administration enormous credit in what they together are attempting to do. I'm a strong supporter of Governor Christie and of what he's trying to do, not only for New Jersey, but really as a model for the rest of the nation as well.
It's funny, I travel around the country and it seems like people find out I'm from New Jersey, they want to talk about our governor. Are you finding that true in Washington, D.C.?
Absolutely, and last October, at the height of the gubernatorial campaigns in Virginia and New Jersey, it was clear, I think, that Bob McDonnell was going to become the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. The race here in New Jersey was close, and I predicted to colleagues on the floor of the House of Representatives, both Democrats and Republicans, that Chris Christie was going to win and that he would govern in a new fashion. And the day after the election on the floor of the House, my colleagues came up to me and said, "You were actually telling the truth, Leonard. You weren't just trying to spin the situation." And now, more recently, my colleagues are saying, what a great example your governor, the governor of New Jersey, is providing not only for his state capital, our state capital, Trenton, but really for the rest of the nation.
Well, when he ran, he said he was going to govern as a one-term governor and just do what he thought was right, not necessarily appease special interest group, and he's certainly holding true to that promise.
The best way, in my judgment, to be successful in public policy is to govern based upon your views of public policy and let the chips fall where they may, and it has been my experience that the people will understand that and will recognize that at the time of a re-election.
Now, President Obama was recently in New Jersey, visiting us just down the street in Edison.
Yes.
Were you here for the visit?
I was not. I was on the floor of the House that day. We were in session. I have the honor of representing half of Edison Township in the Congress. I represent the northern half of Edison. The President was actually in the southern half of Edison in Congressman Pallone's district. Certainly, we welcome the President of the United States anytime he is in New Jersey, and certainly anytime he is in a municipality, half of which I represent in the Congress. But I hope that the President follows through on his words in Edison, that he's focused on the business community, particularly small business. As you know, he met with small business leaders at a sub shop in South Edison.
Tasty Freeze, yes, I know it. Just for the benefit of our viewers here in Westfield, why don't you just describe the 7th Congressional District? It is a fairly large district.
It's a district that spans the width of the state, from Raritan Bay in the east to the Delaware River in the west. It includes 100,000 people in Woodbridge Township in Middlesex County, the largest municipality in the district and one of the largest municipalities in New Jersey. South Plainfield in the northern half of Edison, they are in Middlesex County. And then 40% of the district, the largest percentage of the district, is here in Union County, 16 suburban towns, including, for example, Westfield, Summit, New Providence, Berkeley Heights, Cranford, Clark. 17 towns in Somerset County, an overwhelming majority of Somerset County, and then 18 towns out in Hunterdon County, which is the most rural part of the district, about 18 or 19% of the population. And my wife and I live in Hunterdon County, in the Stanton section of Clinton Township, with a mailing address of Lebanon. Only in New Jersey, Mayor, can you have 3 addresses, but only 1 house.
Thus, 566 municipalities.
566 municipalities, and I represent 54 of them, about 700,000 people, and it's a band across north central New Jersey.
And just a reminder to our residents, of course, you have a congressional field office here right in Westfield.
I have an office on North Avenue East here in Westfield. I'm very proud to have an office in Westfield. We also have an office in Raritan Township, Hunterdon County, with a mailing address of Flemington. For constituents here in the eastern portion of the district, in Union County and Middlesex County, I believe the office here in Westfield is convenient. And then for the Somerset and Hunterdon County residents, I believe the Flemington office is convenient.
Well, I do have to say you have a great staff here in Westfield. Every time I call them, they're very attentive and get, address my needs as soon as possible.
Thank you, and we welcome calls. It's our responsibility in our district offices to handle individual concerns regarding Social Security, Medicare, veterans issues. You may have in your audience those who are entitled to medals, having served in one of our nation's conflicts, and we have tried to be helpful regarding those who really deserve the medals that they've not received. And certainly there is on an ongoing basis questions about individual concerns regarding Social Security or Medicare